Jimmy! Jimmy! That's enough! You need to step away.
Howard, you were a witness to what happened here?
I was.
And you?
I'm a witness.
Hey guys, Kiwi here. In this video, I'll be breaking down and reviewing Season 3, Episode 2 of Better Call Saul, Witness. Warning of spoilers for everything in the show up to Episode 302, and let's jump right into it. Alright, so let's start out talking about Mike, considering that the last episode left off with him on a cliffhanger. So we start off with the sneak peek for the episode Mike Investigates, as Mike follows the people who have been tailing him since the Season 2 finale. He watches the two henchmen who have his bug give it to another guy who then leaves. Mike follows him all night long, watching him go to secret stashes around town, eventually leading him to outside Los Pollos Hermanos. Meanwhile, while Jimmy and Kim interview a former employee for the DMV to be a receptionist for them, Jimmy jumps the gun by asking her to start today, leading Kim to wonder why he's trying to hire their first interview. As Jimmy convinces Kim to hire her, the scene answers my question from my prediction video where I wondered what Jimmy had a good feeling about. Next, we see Jimmy training her on how to answer customer calls to his liking, which I thought was a nice touch as it leads into Mike calling him as well. Mike asks him if he's free for breakfast tomorrow, as he wants Jimmy to investigate for him at Los Pollos. Considering that Mike is being followed by these people, he doesn't want to be seen, so it makes sense that he would call up Jimmy for this task. So he tells Jimmy about the man with a knapsack in the green Chevy and tells him to keep an eye on the knapsack in particular. So as Jimmy walks into the restaurant, he orders a meal and sits down. Now I get that Jimmy is no professional, but he definitely doesn't do the best job on not being obvious as far as eavesdropping goes. And so after Jimmy changes seats to get an even closer view, the man he's watching finishes his meal, throws out his trash and leaves. Jimmy, being as determined as he is, sticks his hand into the trash in hopes of finding something, but is instead interrupted by Gus asking him if he can help him. Now if you're watching this, I assume you're already aware of who Gustavo Fring is from Breaking Bad, and with that being said, I'm glad that they finally introduced his character into the show. This is really starting to explain how exactly Mike and Jimmy even ever came into contact with Gus, starting out with Gus hiding in plain sight just like he did with the original show. After Jimmy reports back to Mike, he pretty much just tells Jimmy to leave, even though Jimmy is extremely eager to continue to help him out. Jimmy mentions that he has Mike's back as he leaves, and Mike responds saying that he'll keep that in mind.
Hey, who's got your back, huh? Me, that's who.
I'll keep that in mind.
Also, as Jimmy drives away, we can see that Gus notices this and is catching on to them, at least a little bit. I wonder how exactly this will unfold, and I'm extremely excited to see more of Gus this season. So as Jimmy goes back to his office with Kim, Mike continues to sit outside of Los Pollos and tail the guy again the next day. Mike continues to follow his target into the desert, leading him to find his old gas cap laying in the middle of the road with a phone ringing on top of it. He picks it up and greets the person on the other end, but we don't get to hear the rest of the conversation. This is the last we see of Mike this episode, so we'll just have to wait and see what exactly Mike and Gus want from each other. Anyways, Ernesto calls Kim and asks her to meet him outside of their office and tries telling him about what he heard on Chuck's tape recorder but doesn't know how to spit it out. We know that he eventually does though, as Kim comes rushing back into the office to tell Jimmy about it. This is where we get to see Jimmy's initial reaction to finding out that Chuck recorded him, which is just complete shock. Jimmy now knows that this is what Chuck meant last episode when he told Jimmy that he would pay, and I can only imagine the betrayal that Jimmy is feeling here, as he only confessed to Chuck to make him feel better. Also, I noticed that Jimmy was removing the tape from his wall the same way Chuck taught him in the Season 3 premiere, by rolling it down with his thumbs. While Jimmy is doing this, Kim is informing him of all the steps they can take against Chuck's recording of him. It turns out that when Jimmy tells Kim that he's good, he's talking about over the fact that he just found out about Chuck recording him. The episode ends at Chuck's house with multiple people giving him a visit. First off, we have Howard parking blocks away along with jumping through backyards in the hopes of not being seen by anyone, as Chuck is worried about Jimmy scoping out the house and planning to break into it to steal the tape. This confirms that Chuck did indeed have Ernesto listen to the tape on purpose last episode, and that this was all a part of his plan. When Kim told Jimmy that they just had to wait for Chuck to make a move and act accordingly, they were already too late, because what they didn't realize is that Ernesto coming and talking to Kim was Chuck's move. And this is because Chuck is expecting Jimmy to break into his house and steal the tape. But what Chuck doesn't expect though is for Jimmy to just barge right into his house in broad daylight and smash the tape right in front of him. Jimmy literally kicks down the door as he runs into the house yelling at Chuck about ruining their family.
Piece of shit! Oh, my brain used to work. I'm sick. I don't know what to do. Asshole!
Jimmy is obviously incredibly butthurt over the fact that Chuck could even do something like this to him, leading Jimmy to break open Chuck's desk and break the tape in half with his hands right in front of Chuck's face. Although Howard and a private investigator initially hide behind a wall, they step out once Jimmy starts threatening to burn down the house if Chuck doesn't come clean to him about having any copies. This is where Chuck asks Howard and the PI if they're both witnesses to what just happened, and they both say yes. And I was honestly skeptical about how much I would like this episode watching it, as the first half was just honestly incredibly slow build-up, but after watching it in its entirety, I can confidently say that I was satisfied with this episode as a follow-up to the Season 3 premiere. It answered the cliffhangers left last episode, along with pushing the story forward with both Mike and Jimmy. We also get to see their timelines cross as Mike asks Jimmy for help, getting him involved with Mike's situation. Gus also gets his first introduction in the show as well this episode as he meets Jimmy for the first time, along with catching on to Mike tailing his bug. The episode left off with two cliffhangers, one with Mike answering the phone and the second with Jimmy standing silently in Chuck's house with the realization that he might have just really screwed himself over. What do you guys think about the episode? Feel free to leave your opinions down below as I'd love to hear what you might have to say about it, and please leave a like if you've enjoyed anything I've said today as it really helps me out. That's pretty much it for the video guys, so I thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.